All right, so to start again, I'll keep it brief. This is the third panel. We're looking at Turkey's foreign policy in a region that is changing very, very rapidly. Everybody's thinking, of course, about Turkey and Syria in particular. But overall, Turkey does seem to have big ambitions for the region. If you listen to the speech that the Prime Minister made after his election, after the victory, he said that today Sarajevo had won as much as Istanbul, Beirut won as much as Izmir, Damascus won as much as Ankara, Ramallah, Nablus, Jenin, the West Bank and Jerusalem won as much as Diyarbakir. And that's a statement that really says a lot about Turkey's ambitions for the region and also for the Muslim world. Now, everybody knows a lot about Turkey, of course. Its rise has been very impressive. Politically, but also economically. It's now the 16th world economic power, and the level of its political, cultural, and economic engagement has led many people to ask the question, is this a new Ottoman Empire? But Turkey's ambitions require a very careful balancing act. Will it be able to pull it off? Was it taken by surprise by the Arab Spring? It had a zero problems policy for the neighborhood, but its policy towards Syria is certainly running into some problems. What about ties with Israel? There's been a lot of strain. There are talks now that there are reports now that there are talks underway to try to mend the rift. Can Turkey be a regional power and mediator if it turns its back to the West? And of course, there's always the question of Iran. Now, to answer all these questions, we have a great panel. Sitting right next to me is Suat Kinikilioglu, and I hope I pronounced the name more or less okay. He's a member of the AKA party since 2007. Today he's the AKA party's deputy chairman of external affairs. He's a member of the party's central executive committee. He founded the German Marshall Fund office in Ankara 6 years ago, so he's got a lot of history looking at Turkey's foreign policy. He writes about it extensively in various publications, including today's Zaman. But he started out in the Turkish Air Force, so he may have an interesting military perspective to the issues that we're discussing. Sitting next to him is Ambassador Dr. Alon Liel. He's the former Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry. He served as Foreign Affairs Advisor to Ehud Barak. He was ambassador to South Africa, also a chargé d'affaires in Ankara in the 80s when Turkey was a very different country. He's written several books about Turkey and Turkish-Israeli relations. He's also chairman of the Israel-Syrian Peace Society. And in your recent assessment, Ambassador Liel, you said that the Prime Minister of Turkey would not abandon President Assad, so we'll be curious to hear what you think about this today. We're missing one panelist, well, I'll introduce her. She is, oh, you're here. Sorry. As you should, after lunch. Exactly. Dr. Lenore Martin is a professor of political science at Emmanuel College in Boston. She chairs and co-chairs seminars on the Middle East, which are co-sponsored by Harvard University. She spent some time in Turkey for research and has written extensively about Turkey, the Middle East, and the Gulf. And in a recent article with Dr. Joshua Walker, she asked whether Turkey was losing its balancing act in the Middle East and described Turkey as a flip-flopping power. And last but not least, Dr. Malik Mufti. He's Associate Professor of Political Science at Tufts University. He's written extensively about Syria and Turkey. One of his books is titled A Little America, The Emergence of Turkish Hegemony. He's got a very interesting take on Turkey's bid for regional power. He compares it to the way the US wields international power on a global scale with both soft and hard power. I'll take my prerogative as a moderator and start by asking each one of you to introduce yourself for 10-12 minutes. I'm under very strict instructions to cut you off if you take any longer.
Thank you. And thank you to the Middle East Institute for the second annual Turkey conference, which I have a great pleasure in attending. And the crowds this year are as large and attentive as last year, so this is great to see. Thank you to Wendy and Gönül and all of those who contributed. In 2006, when I was working for the German Marshall Fund, one of the main themes that I articulated, or tried to articulate to my American friends, was the absence and the small number of Turkey experts in this city. And I urged them that they should invest in people send them over to Turkey, learn Turkish, and understand my country better. In 2006, people were looking really puzzled at me when I was proposing that. Today, in the coffee breaks in this building, people are complaining that they do not know Turkish, or that they wish they would know the country better, and that now the rise and strength of our country is becoming such a source of attention that there is a genuine need to know more. I repeat my urge and proposition that the United States, and this city in particular, with its dozens of, maybe if not hundreds of think tanks, should invest more in Turkey experts. And I'm not saying that because I'm looking for a new job. I'm saying that because I really think that this country would benefit from that. The reason why we're here and why so many people are following this conference is because this country now has become an influential country, not only projecting influence to its immediate neighborhood, but also now beyond its immediate neighborhood. Many Muslim countries, many countries who feel that there is a lesson to be learned from either the Justice and Development Party experience and or the way how a religion and a secular order can be established, how it can be managed, and the experiences of more than 8 decades of secularism in Turkey. But to the subject, I think, let me underline again that Turkey's Middle East policy cannot be seen separated from Turkey's neighborhood policy. And last year in my speech here, that was the main subject, and I have to repeat some parts of it, that Turkey's neighborhood policy seeks to reintegrate, and I underline reintegrate, into its immediate neighborhoods, including the Middle East. But not only the Middle East, the Balkans, the Middle East, the Balkans, the Black Sea, the Caucasus, the Middle East, and North Africa included. And by reintegration, I mean the first deepening political dialogue between Turkey and its neighbors, increasing the trade volume with our neighbors, and most importantly, encouraging direct people-to-people contact between Turks and our neighbors in the form of sports, cultural events, and now increasingly by lifting the visa regime with our neighbors to facilitate the free movement of people, goods, and ideas. And this is a two-way street where we also learn from our neighbors, from their experiences, and where sometimes they also learn from us. Now, the Middle East comes into the picture from this perspective, and I know when the neighborhood policy, or when Turkish neighborhood policy is being discussed, I sometimes ran into the charge that Turkey was caring only about the Middle Eastern component of its neighborhood policy, and that other parts of the neighborhood were not as important. I, again, like to reiterate intellectually, principally from Ankara, where we are sitting, there is no difference for us between Georgia and Iraq, or Bulgaria and Iran, when it comes to the neighborhood perspective. But indeed, especially with the war in Iraq in 2003, a lot of our attention has been directed towards the Middle East, because simply there was so much going on. It continues to go on to this day. And there's no doubt that the Arab Spring that started with Tunisia has now even more intensified that attention and that outlook. From our perspective, the Arab Spring is a game changer for the region. We think that the Arab Spring, the events in Tunisia, have unleashed a series of events that will radically transform the region. And we don't think any country will be immune from this. And I'm not going to name countries, but we think all countries who lack democratic legitimacy in their domestic contexts will, in one way or the other, be impacted and most likely find themselves in a process of radical transformation of their internal orders.